A couple of years ago, Nintendo decided to release some new versions of its first gaming handheld, the Game Watch, which launched with a single game called Ball back in 1980. However, these new versions didn't seem to take off exactly how Nintendo wanted them to. When the Game & Watch series was first released back in the 80s, the handheld was designed to hold only one game. You had a variety of options to choose from, including Donkey Kong, Ball, Mario Bros, Flagman, Vermin, and even a Snoopy tennis game. These handhelds used a very simplistic graphics which were based off the same technology found in calculators at the time. In 2016, Nintendo decided to release the NES Classic, which came bundled with 30 games, including some of Nintendo's best classic games for the NES. A year later, they launched a Super Nintendo version with 21 games. It seemed like Nintendo was going to continue the trend and possibly bring out some sort of N64 variant, but what made sense was some type of Game Boy Classic. Since the device was already pretty pocketable, not much needed to happen in the design department. They could have bundled it with 20 or 30 of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color's best games. However, Nintendo took a different approach in 2020 with the release of the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch, a recreation of their first handheld gaming device with a new twist. You were able to play Super Mario Bros. 1 and 2, however, it was the version released in Japan, not the Doki Doki version. Along with it came the original Game & Watch game Ball. Given what Nintendo had done before, it seems strange to release one of these with two very similar games, and while I don't mind Ball being included, it felt very lackluster. I remember buying a couple of these thinking they were going to sell out and be hard to find. Boy, was I wrong. The device let you adjust time, volume, and brightness, and was charged using a USB cable that came bundled with it. The controls were fine to play Super Mario Bros., however, at times the rubbery feeling of the A and B button made it a little difficult, since the original NES controller didn't have rubber buttons but plastic ones. Since this was supposed to be for Mario's 35th anniversary, you'd think they would have included some additional games, maybe the full Super Mario Bros. Classic games, including 1, 2, 3, and Super Mario World. It just would make sense, and doesn't seem like there was really a limitation in technology that wouldn't allow this to happen. It was more like Nintendo decided to only release certain games with it. Just a year later, Nintendo put out the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch version. Now, this one at least came with some more options in games, but still felt like it could have been so much more. They included the first two NES games and the Game Boy game Link's Awakening. Now, I adore Link's Awakening, but it seemed strange to release the black and white version when Link's Awakening DX was right there, and in color. It also came with the original Vermin game, but with Link's face on the character model. The first two NES games are classic, but having the option to maybe also include Link to the Past just made sense and probably would have made the system sell better. Now, don't get me wrong, the first NES Legend of Zelda game is a classic, but Link to the Past still holds up as one of the best in the series. I understand what Nintendo was trying to do with these handhelds. They were showcasing games from their best series, and I'm sure most of these were purchased by fans of the old games and maybe a few collectors. It doesn't seem like these devices did as well as they could. When you look back at what made the Game Boy successful for Nintendo, it was the ability to play multiple different games with you while on the go. Now, yes, you had to swap out cartridges, but you still had plenty of options to choose from with these games. I don't think the gaming community was asking for too much, but just enough to make these devices worthy of a purchase. I bought them more of collector pieces. It's easy to see why you can still find them in stores to this day, as opposed to the NES and Super NES classics, which are no longer in production and can't even be purchased in stores. These two handhelds are very easy to find online and in stores. It's a hard sell to have someone pay $50+ for two NES games and a Game & Watch game on a handheld. Nowadays, you can buy retro handhelds that let you play these games and many more for a similar price. Not to mention, you can also play these games on the Nintendo Switch if you pay for their premium online service. I truly feel that Nintendo missed the ball on these, and while they're fun to look at and think to yourself, wow, I can play Super Mario Bros. On this thing. Neat. They really could have been so much more. I feel that if Nintendo instead went the route of some kind of Game Boy Classic, they would have accomplished what they were trying to do with this. Now, could they still do something like that? Absolutely. Will they? Not likely. There's more of a chance we'll get Game Boy games added to the Switch Online services in the future. I still love the fact that I own these devices, just like I do the NES and the Super NES Classics, but these sit more as display pieces than actual items I take with me on the go. If I do take it with me, it's more to share with someone the cool idea of, hey, remember that game from the 80s? You could play it on this thing here. Now, do you own any of these two devices? If so, do you play them or do they sit on a shelf? Let me know down in the comments, and as always, thank you for visiting my channel and checking out my content. If you're already not subscribed and enjoy the content, please follow me on here and let me know what you think. That's it for me. I'm Rudy with the Retro Universe, and I'm out.